Hello, James Stephanie Sterling here, the luckiest slot in Yorkshire. We actually had somewhere else we were going to film instead of just outside some shitty little casino. It was really good, but then someone walked by and sat next to us and immediately started smoking weed, so we had to go around the corner and just film here. But I mean, we're talking a bit about like gambling and stuff, so this sort of works. Cars coming by, one sec. Let's roll the video. This location is shit. After years and years of waiting, Activision Blizzard's free-to-play take on the Diablo series, Diablo Immortal, has finally sloughed its way onto PC and mobile phones. This game was revealed so long ago, the world hadn't yet known that Activision and Blizzard were perpetuating horrifying environments of abuse and harassment toward female, gender non-conforming and queer colleagues. It was, however, quite the controversial release, even without the knowledge that the company's management was a pack of sick fucking monsters, infamously announced to a chorus of boos at BlizzCon 2018 as a crowd of hopeful Diablo fans got news of a shitty freemium mobile game they sincerely didn't want.
Is there any plans to make this playable on PC, or is this strictly mobile forever?
Are there any? The current plan is to be on mobile, both Android and iOS. We don't have any plans at the moment to do PC. Do you guys not have phones?
Yeah, you guys all have phones, right?
Well, the game is finally out, and rather than prove our cynical doubts wrong, Diablo Immortal has justified all of the animosity by being exactly what everyone expected it to be. Yet another microtransaction-fueled, loot box-laden, predatory insult to a much-beloved series. Unsurprisingly, microtransactions rule the roost with the usual shamelessly manipulative economy that has plagued video games for a decade now. There are three currencies, because of course there are: gold, platinum, and eternal orbs. Gold is the bullshit flimsy in-game currency designed to give players a false sense of investment and encourage a psychological sunk cost. Platinum is the halfway house currency. It can be earned in dribs and drabs by playing the game, but you can easily speed up its acquisition by paying real-world money for it. Eternal orbs, of course, are the real currency used to buy most of the things people would actually care about, and can only be bought directly for your real-world cash. Like all good piece of fucking shit games, Diablo Immortal features gambling in the form of loot boxes, though Blizzard has worked hard to obfuscate the nature of said gambling by burying it under false complexity. Essentially, you have these things called Elder Rifts, which are basically special areas you can enter to kill monsters and earn rewards. Legendary crests are items that modify these rifts to increase the odds of getting desirable loot, while adding some random gameplay elements. It's through this method that players acquire legendary gems, the most crucial item in gearing up your character and making them more powerful. Gems are the crux of character improvement in Diablo Immortal and are intertwined with an overly convoluted randomized system that could best be described as loot boxes wearing sunglasses and a fake moustache. A really slimy, underhanded method of trying to hide that this is just the same old gacha cash grab it's always been. God, if only Blizzard had used the time and effort spent on camouflaging a Volturine gambling economy in order to improve the treatment of its employees instead. You know, fewer resources spent designing gacha systems, more resources spent on teaching bosses not to subject women to humiliating rituals where men get massively drunk and crawl around under the desks of their women co-workers. I'm only joking, of course. It's not a zero-sum game. It isn't an either-or scenario. And Blizzard could have fixed its shockingly bigoted and abusive work culture at literally any time. It just explicitly chose not to for years. All of this is to say that Diablo Immortal has hardly been a disappointment, because it's exactly the kind of contemptuous shakedown we all knew it was gonna be. So unable to break type is the average AAA game company, it can't help but prove our cynicism correct time and time again. I remember when Immortal was announced to that intense negative reaction at BlizzCon, and how some people criticised that response for being unfair, presumptuous, maybe even a little little entitled, but the response was right. The negativity was right. The booing was right. It was always going to be right because a company like Activision Blizzard is capable only of doing wrong. Activision Blizzard CEO Bobby Kotick once threatened to have his assistant murdered. It's one of several cruel, hurtful, frightening, malicious things that man is said to have done throughout his career. Just thought I'd mention that. YouTube channel Bellular News did the math and worked out that in order to fully maximize a Diablo Immortal character using microtransactions, a player would have to spend $110,000. Yep, that's right, $110,000. That's what you'd need to acquire the fucking legendary gems needed to boost your stats. They also ran the math on the time it'd take to do this without microtransactions, and the blatant grind is off the fucking charts. Maxing out a character without paid for assistance would require 10 years of playtime, not hours, not days, not weeks. Fucking years. I absolutely love it when the numbers are run and we expand the true cost of microtransactions. The entire idea of microtransactions runs on tricking people into spending lots of money by breaking their purchases down incrementally. A few bucks here and a few bucks there to make people think they're not making too big a purchase until their next bank statement reveals they spent a fucking grand. The sheer wanton greed on display with Diablo Immortal is some next level chicanery. Though funnily enough, none of this is what I had actually planned to talk about with Diablo Immortal this week. My plan to talk about the game formulated before it was revealed that it had cost 100 fucking 10 fucking cunting grand to fucking max out, as I'd initially decided to focus on how the game hasn't been released in Belgium and how fucking insidious Blizzard has been about that situation. As long-time viewers will know, Belgium and the Netherlands have been proactive in pursuing loot boxes in games, arguing correctly that loot boxes are indeed gambling and shouldn't be smuggled into games aimed at kids. This has led to a number of tantrums from game publishers over the years, most notably Electronic Arts, who promised to break the law and continue shoveling gambling into its FIFA games before it finally backed down. Several games have retooled themselves to remove the offending systems before releasing in these countries, while others have opted not to release them altogether, Diablo Immortal being in the latter category. Apparently, in-game gambling is so intrinsic to the Diablo Immortal experience that Blizzard refuses to launch in countries where it can't be utilised. I like to think this puts paid to the age-old game industry excuse that loot boxes are fine because they're just optional and that nobody has to buy them. Clearly they're not optional. Clearly they're fucking integral to the game if Blizzard can't extract them from the core product. But Blizzard ain't stupid. I mean, its leadership was savvy enough to get away with sexual harassment for years, and it's quite clearly using Diablo Immortal to leverage some negative PR against loot box regulation, rather than entertain for a second that it might be the problem. Rather than admit in any small way that the onus is on it to make changes to how it does business, Blizzard has entirely blamed Belgium and the Netherlands for its decision not to launch Immortal in those countries. Diablo Immortal will not be available in Belgium or the Netherlands and will not appear on Battle.net or the Belgian and Netherlands app or Google Play stores, said a rep when asked by Eurogamer. This is related to the current operating environment for games in those countries. Accordingly, pre-registrations for the game are not accessible in those markets. While the statement doesn't explicitly mention loot box regulation, a customer service response laid it out far more clearly, stating, "Players in the Netherlands and Belgium will not be able to install Diablo Immortal due to the country's gambling restrictions. The loot boxes in the game are against the law in your country." Blizzard waited, a more suspicious person would suggest deliberately, until right at launch before pulling the rug out from under players in these countries, and its snotty little responses in the aftermath have absolutely pinned all responsibility on the law and not their role in making that law necessary in the first place, refusing to launch a game in countries where loot boxes are regulated, and then using that refusal as a propaganda point, attempting to turn gamers against loot box regulation by demonstrating how it stops them from having access to games. But make no mistake, the responsibility for games not launching in Belgium and the Netherlands rests purely on the shoulders of those developing and publishing them. Like I said, for years game companies told us loot boxes were just optional little treats, merely surprise mechanics, ancillary bonuses that had no impact on the game itself and could be safely ignored. Yeah? Well, if that's so fucking true, why the fuck isn't Diablo Immortal available to Dutch and Belgian players then? Why are loot boxes completely unnecessary and yet something Blizzard can't fucking bear to part with? It's horseshit, is why. Another game industry lie, yet another example, one of thousands, of the game industry trying to have its cake and fuck it too, at once pretending loot boxes are meaningless and behaving as if they're so invaluable to the game that they can't be removed to comply with laws that have been known about for a long time. It's absolutely propaganda used to sway public opinion against regulation of corporations, and as we should all know by now, that's really fucking bad because corporations don't do anything unless they're forced to by outside pressure, be it regulation or unionization, and Activision Blizzard would certainly know all about that, considering its damn near pathological mistreatment of its employees, which has led to both government intervention and an organised workforce. Congratulations to Raven Software's QA staff on winning that union vote, by the way. Activision Blizzard, of all companies, throwing a stompy little hissy fit over regulations is especially offensive given how malicious it's demonstrated it can be when it has no oversight. It's one of the most corrupt companies in America, both within and without the game industry, featuring obscene levels of pay disparity between high and low ranking workers, engaging in shocking tax evasion and corporate welfare, manipulating the stock market to further enrich its executive classes, and employing a CEO who harasses women, threatens assistants, and oversaw a culture of jaw-dropping abuse for over a decade, only to have an equally crooked gaggle of shareholders circle the wagons around him when it all became public knowledge. And this is before we get into the political corruption, such as, oh, I don't know, California's governor meddling in that lawsuit against Activision Blizzard. I truly will never be able to vocalise to an adequate degree my level of disgust with Activision Blizzard as an entity. A fraudulent, vicious, wholly unethical company, truly one of the most filth-encrusted examples of capitalism run rampant in modern history. Not counting America's medical industry, of course, that's just not a fair race. But seriously, Activision Blizzard as a company is rotten to the absolute core. I've argued this before, I will continue to do so, and no, I don't think the Microsoft buyout is going to help any, especially with news of certain Microsoft leaders also being pretty abusive cunts themselves. The way it makes its games, the way it financially operates, the way it treats human beings, the way it pays no taxes and gets a refund anyway, so even if you boycott their games, you're still financially supporting the twats. Everything about Activision Blizzard is just harmful. Its existence does more harm than good, and it's run by an evil, cruel, petty, little man. That is what Bobby Kotick is. He's a little man. A billionaire with nothing left to desire but the smallest of stakes. A man who considered buying Kotaku to get positive Activision Blizzard coverage. That is how tiny Bobby Kotick is. For all that man's inconceivable wealth and political power, Bobby Kotick is pathetic. A sad, sick, sorry, minuscule man. And my husband, overhearing me, just said there's a non-zero chance that Bobby Kotick will tug himself off hearing that. Remember to thank God for me when you come, Bobby. Now, of course, you know what the A in Robert A. Kotick stands for, right? A fucking bellend. Yeah, that'll do.